Today we're reviewing another book by Patrick Bet-David called Choose Your Enemies Wisely, Business Planning for the Audacious Few. I would say I was attracted to this book primarily because of the title. It was a cool title, Choose Your Enemies Wisely. I wasn't sure what he was going with it, what he meant by it, but as I read it, really the most important part of that was business planning for the audacious few. It's really a 275-page book on how you create a business plan. How do you modify a business plan? How do you follow a business plan? And I think it's very well marketed because I don't think a lot of people would have bought the book if it was titled Business Planning 101. Here's the 10 steps in order to set up a good business plan. But what he did was he got you curious. He made it fun. He made the book actually fun. And he actually made the topic of how do you create a business plan somewhat interesting. And the other thing he did is he really incorporated the main title, Choose Your Enemies Wisely. It's his basic foundation for how he starts a business plan. So here's what the author does. He bases the entire book off of this pyramid, and he uses this pyramid as a tool to create and develop a business plan. And before he even gets to this, the first thing that he does is he makes sure he looks back at the previous year. It's important to look back before you can actually move forward. You got to go back and reassess what worked, what didn't work, what changes you can make, that type of thing. Then, after you look back and reassess what happened in the past, then you start looking forward. And the very first thing that he does when he looks forward is he looks for an enemy. So to him, an enemy is somebody or something or some thought that evokes an emotion, something that gets under your skin. You know, he kind of brings you back to your childhood. Like, who doubted you? Who didn't believe in you? Who said you couldn't make it? Who said you couldn't do it? In his case, it was a guidance counselor that said he'll never amount to anything. He uses Tom Brady a lot in this book. Patrick Bet-David actually sat down for a couple-hour interview with Tom Brady, who is regarded as the greatest quarterback of all time. And he actually writes about him in this book in this context. He says, Tom Brady was drafted 198. So that means there are several quarterbacks that was drafted ahead of him. Well, who was his enemy? At the start, he had 6 or 7 quarterbacks that were drafted ahead of him that was his enemy. He was going to prove that he was better than them. That was his motivation. As he went along in his career, he always adapted and changed his enemy. Once he conquered and became the best quarterback, well, then it became, how many championships can I win? At one point, Patrick Mahomes, who was 24 years of age, he won a Super Bowl. He was the talk. Gosh, he's actually going to replace Tom Brady. He's going to be better than Tom Brady. Well, Patrick Mahomes became an enemy. He moved to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, actually saw Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl and beat him. The bottom line is every year you're reassessing, you're trying to find something that motivates you, that gets under your skin, that drives you forward with your business plan. So after you define your enemy, then he has you kind of detail the duration and depth, and he calls it the magic of your plan. And really all that is, he didn't really go into a lot of depth on that, but basically be forward thinking. Imagine your business 20 years from now. Where do you want to end up 20 years from now? That's the duration, that's the depth, that's the context of your business. And that is where the magic happens. Then, after you do that, then you fill in these little key areas of the pyramid. So fill out the 11 blocks, which after you define your enemy, you got 11 more blocks he guides you through for you to fill in. Once that is done, what he does throughout the year, he doesn't just come up with a business plan and forget about it. He monitors it. He has systems in place to check where is he at with his plan. So every quarter, he evaluates what's working, what's not working, and then he course corrects. So he's always adapting, he's always changing, he's paying attention to the business plan. He's not going through all this effort for no reason. This is a vital, important part of every one of his businesses that he takes very seriously. So that's his overall system in developing a plan. But the real details are filling out these 11 blocks and really looking at this pyramid. To him, every business plan has to have an equal weighted emotion and an equal weighted logic. And that makes sense. He kind of takes you into many boardrooms that we've sat in where a guy will come up there very emotionless, show you a bunch of graphs, show you a bunch of charts. It's important. You need that information in your business plan, but it doesn't get anybody excited. Then he'll also take you back to board meetings that we've all sat in where a guy gets up there, he riles you up, he's all excited. It's kind of a rah rah thing, but there's no substance. And what he's saying is in a business plan, you have to have emotion to get you motivated. And you also have to have your systems and the logic in place. So any good plan has to have equal weighted emotion and equal weighted logic. Every one of these things, he's got key principles that you got to focus on for your business plan. They're equally weighted. The only time he divvies that is in phase 2 of developing a business plan when you're choosing your enemy. That is, as you see that, that's where it's weighted more on the emotion side because that's the foundation. That's what drives you. So at this point, every chapter of the book, he kind of takes one of these sections of the pyramid and really just kind of details it out. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time going over that. I mean, you can read that for yourself. But it was very good. It was very entertaining. Every chapter, I learned something. So basically, the enemy is like, who do you want to beat? Who do you want to conquer? Who gets you all riled up? The logical side, the competition side, that's more of the analytical side. You know, market analysis, for instance. How does your competition do business, and how can you do it better than them? Then the next chapter is will and skill. Will would be the emotional side. Skill will be the logical side. So will is the need to succeed, you know, your heart, you know, that your desire, your burning desire. Write those down. And then what skills do you need? Like what knowledge do you have to get? What seminars do you got to go to? What books do you got to read? And then he kind of goes to the next level. What's your mission? What's your cause? What is your crusade? And then on the logical side, well, what's your action steps to achieve your goals? Then he talks about dreams. You know, what are you aiming for? You know, what's your end result? Then the systems, the logical side, you know, what kind of systems are you going to have in place to make sure that you achieve those dreams? So the next chapter is about culture and team. The culture is the emotional side. The team is the logical side. The culture is a general feel. You know how you get the culture, how do you get your team, how do you get your business to follow a set of principles where they'll do anything for you. And then the team part is how do you develop the team? Who are the key players of your business? Finally, he kind of guides you to the last step, your vision, which that's the emotional side. You know, what are those principles and values that guide your business? And then the logical side, you know, how do you raise the capital? How do you actually run the business financially? And then once you complete all of this, if you go through this process of actually developing a business plan that you take seriously, you are the audacious few. There's very few people in his mind that actually spend the time to really figure out in detail what do they want, where they're headed, and how they're going to get there. And if you can do that and you become the audacious few, you become one of those few people that actually succeed in business. So after he goes through all these points in individual chapters, then he kind of summarizes things at the end and kind of tells you how you're going to roll out your plan. You know, how do you fine tune the details? And he asks certain questions to invoke a response out of yourself to make you think, how do you fill out these little sections yourself? To give you an example, I won't read every one of these, but yes, like for choosing your enemy, he would ask these questions, you know, wants you to kind of fill them in so you can kind of figure out who your enemy is. He'll ask questions like, what are the enemies that produce the most emotion are? Fill in the blank. The specific enemy for this year for me is fill in the blank. The specific enemy for this year for my business is fill in the blank. When we crush this enemy, I'm going to feel fill in the blank. We will celebrate by defeating this enemy by doing fill in the blank. And he does that for every one of these things here. And actually, at the end, what he does is he actually shows you a sample of business plans that he's actually done. And when you actually see it on paper, he summarizes it very nicely. It looks like a very effective tool and a very effective way of developing a business plan. So I guess when I first read this book, I didn't know I was going to be reading a book, even though it was in the title. I was focused on choosing your enemies wisely. But I didn't think I was going to be doing a book review on how to create a business plan. But actually, being an entrepreneur and a businessman myself, it showed a lot of weaknesses in my own life. I don't really spend that much time really detailing and planning things out. And it sort of inspired me to kind of look at how I can improve myself And it really gave me a lot of pointers. So, and it is important. I mean, if you're not focused, if you don't know the direction you're headed, if you just have vague goals and you don't follow up with them and you don't have systems in place, I think it's going to be hard for you to compete at the highest level. And if you really want to see how people are competing at the highest level, like Patrick Bet David, you're going to have to do stuff like this. So it was a good book, and I recommend anybody who's into business whatsoever to actually take the time and read that. I mean, if you're going to pick a book about business planning, most of them are probably pretty boring. This one here, I think, was effective and relatively entertaining. So, and it wasn't boring. So, if you have to pick one book, pick up "Choose Your Enemies Wisely" by Patrick Bet David. So that completes a series of business books by Patrick Bet David that we reviewed. If you have any comments or suggestions or a suggested business book that we could review in the future, please comment down below and always subscribe and like.